Good morning, Boone County and beyond. It is Sunday, April 12th. I'm your host, Bud Wiry, and you're in the shop. So, guys, don't you always notice how it's the little parts and it's the details that always tend to make the story complete? And that is always seems to be the part everybody wants to leave out. So, just like in the Kendall interview that he had with Gentry the other day, I'm going to step into that in a minute because I think there was some pretty big misses in that, and I appreciate everything Kendall does, and I think he did a great job. He pinned Gentry on the H-1B visas and some of the other details, but there's a lot more to that story that really got left out. So I want to delve into that a little bit later, kind of what I'm going to call the rebuttal to that interview. But then even here locally, so we had a Republican candidate forum hosted by Farm Bureau, and it was out there at the fairgrounds. Well, in this, I'd started to see candidates posting that their competition didn't show up to this event. Well, there was something else I'd heard about this event. So I'd heard that they had a Democrat that was actually being the moderator at this event. So, already knowing this, when I seen candidates start to post that, like, kind of that line, like, my opponent was too scared to show up sort of thing. And me having already heard this, well, I started asking a little bit of a question. When I was talking about the event, I just let on that I had heard this one little detail. And then all of a sudden, I had a community member, Miss Peggy Daggy, come out and kind of attack me like, Bud, why don't you get out here? Why weren't you at the events? Then you could judge for yourself instead of looking up and then trying to slander somebody. And it came at me real throttled. So and obviously what that does is make me look into it more. Like, I just heard this little bit, but I hadn't gotten into it yet. So I started looking, and then it became obviously clear that the rumor was 100% true, because in Peggy's response to me, where she was kind of throttling me, she also said that the moderator was nonpartisan, independent person, a professional, and that's why they chose him, right? So that's what they said. Well, but when I started looking this individual up, this individual had all kinds of pride stuff on their thing. Indiana, Women's Democrat Coalition trying to share. This was an activist level Democrat, so you got your people out there that are a Republican or a Democrat, and that's how they vote. And then you got the people that actively, share, different event stuff, push things, try to, push that opinion out there more. And that's more of your activist level person that's getting out there and engaging like that. And why? So instantly, this individual, Miss Peggy Daggy, she came out there and attacked me and then tried to say that this person was non-biased. And that was proven instantly to be incorrect and a pointed lie as it was. And I don't know why. I say I don't know why. At first, I didn't know why that she was coming at me so hot like that about that, just because initially I was just asking a question. And then it became patently clear once I looked up the event and I got into it. Her husband, Brian Daggy, who's been around here, he's gotten on the television several times to speak out against the leap development stuff. I mean, always been very casual. I mean, I'm not saying that Mr. Daggy has been a real force behind it, but he has gotten out there several times talking about it. And so he is actually the one who set up this event. So he was listed as the contact person for this Republicans, candidate forum. So now all of a sudden it was making sense. I was understanding Peggy is his wife, and she was coming at me because I was asking a question about who they chose to be this moderator. This moderator is a left wing activist type person. And now that leaves one other question. So the Republicans that did not show to this event because they were not wanting to be in front of a Democrat operative like that. Well, now they have some justification for that. And now, so we have somebody was lying. The people organizing it were kind of lying about the fact that this is who they chose to be the moderator for this event. Concerned Republicans who stayed away because that's just smart politics. I'm not walking in front because we've all seen the moderators be able to tip the scales in the presidential stuff and everything else, and they're very easily able to, you don't even have to be blatant. It doesn't have to be very visible, But if they have a preference, and I understand that completely, the Democrats would not want me to be hosting their event because I'll tell you what, I'll be making the most sane one look the best. I mean, that's just what you're going to do because I am an activist level conservative. I mean, I try to push for conservative values. I mean, I get out here and talk to you guys. I run conservative pages. I am not the person that the Democrats would want to come in and be fielding the floor for them at any sort of event. So, okay, so we had Republicans that stayed away from the event for that. We have these other Republicans saying that their, competition was too scared to see them at this event. And then we have people kind of trying to hide what it was. So this all has a very bad look to it. And, that's what I was saying. I mean, when I was just asking a question, somebody could have easily said, we chose a Democrat moderator for the balance. We chose this person for this reason or that reason. I mean, I don't think none of it's good. I don't want Democrats involved in anything to do with a Republican event. But, I mean, at least there could have been possibly some justification. But to come out there the way they did made this whole thing look nefarious. So I don't know if, some of these people, because you see how this stuff stacks up, because we've talked about some of the connections in our local politics. Like right now we have, of the Plunketts, we have the Dustin Plunkett, who's on the, Boone County Council. And we have Lisa Bruder, who's in there at the clerk's office. And then we now have Jason Plunkett that is running for a Boone County commissioner. Well, they're all cousins. And you also got the Lisa Bruder and the Jennifer Lasley are almost running as a team. They have mutual events. So when you start seeing all these connections, you know that there's teams playing. And then it just makes some of this stuff start to wonder, like, is this connecting? Was this intentional? Because I believe it was Lisa Bruder that actually posted on one of the times that it was her competition, didn't show up to the event. And it very much had that, my competition was too afraid to show up. It had that vibe. So, and then you find out, well, they had a Democrat operative as a moderator. That's why some of these other candidates chose not to go. And was there intent in this? Was it just, an oversight on everything? But the way it was put to me, like they actively chose this individual for this event. So there was some amount of deliberate to at least that part of it. But that's what I'm saying and how the details make the difference. Because right now, that was a big detail in that. Oh, you can say that these people didn't show up, but then you learn later on, well, there's a pretty legitimate reason for why they didn't show up. So, all of a sudden that one little detail makes that matter so much. And so then I'm going to get into the Gentry interview with Mr. Rob Kendall. And, I think part of it is because I've heard that Kendall talk about some of these things before. So some of the things I'm going to talk about, it's not that Kendall doesn't know them. He just chose not to talk about it in this particular interview with Matt. And I don't think for the most part, I think Kendall gave Matt a pretty nice interview. And he allowed Matt a lot of time to, try to set his positions, his side of the story. And, almost let Matt give an opportunity to soften it a bit. Now, I know in previous interviews that Matt and Kendall had kind of, went after it. And Matt has had a history of saying things like kind of almost behind Kendall's back, posting trash, talking him, that sort of thing. So I don't know if this was just a mending event and everybody was trying to play nice or what it was. But the parts that I think that really needed to be talked about in this, because, when you have Matt coming up there saying, oh, he's an innocent person in this. And, he's a victim too of just the circumstance of the state coming in here and doing that. Well, that does not hold very good, legitimacy when you get into the fact that Matt Gentry, his dad, Mike Gentry, they have a company called Market Red, which has been active for 20 years and all this Republican politics in this. They got money that comes in from these same Republican groups that are pushing this stuff now. Braun himself has paid them hundreds of thousands of dollars. These people were in the know. They have connections directly to these same politicians, all that. So when they're trying to sit there and say, oh, we didn't know nothing about this, they are absolutely lying. and they're absolutely trying to hide the fact that were not insiders in all this, and that is patently untrue. So, and I know that Kendall knows that stuff. I had heard him say it before, so it was just something that he was choosing to leave out of this conversation. But then this goes into other things. So when they're talking about the water, they brought up the fact that they were going to pull this water from Eagle Creek, and Gentry's kind of like, not yet, and just trying to play it off. But the big contentious thing with this whole debate is the 25 million gallon of wastewater that Lebanon is going to be pumping back into Eagle Creek Reservoir. And this has the Eli Lilly, the Meta, has all this wastewater from all these. They're going to run it through the treatment plant that doesn't know how. We've covered all that on this show, and it's all posted up on the shop page, how these plants are not capable of dealing with these synthetic chemicals and all this other stuff that's in this water, but they're going to treat it. They're going to dump it right back into Eagle Creek. For now, it's into the water supply of everybody. And that has been the biggest topic of the last several months since this plant has come to light. There's been a lot of news coverage on it, a lot of all that, and I don't really understand why Rob decided to leave that out of the message. But evidently, it just wasn't part of. Maybe he was trying to start a rapport. You got to understand that Rob's kind of in a spot now to where his radio show is he's starting his own thing. So he's not really in the position to go probably full throttle at these people right now and just completely run them off the show. I mean, I get that. There's a sense to it. And if you're in this business of trying to share the media stuff to make money, then you have to be a little more, I don't know, political about it than I am. So since I do this all on my time, my dime sort of thing, I'm not beholden to anybody as far as what I can say, because even then, I mean, sponsors don't like for you to get so full throttle that you might alienate somebody. I mean, there's a lot of they don't want the really controversial thing. They don't want somebody to be almost the critical coverage. I mean, and it is. And that's why it's so hard now to get true, actual critical coverage, because I mean, this stuff like the 25 million gallon, there's been no environmental studies about this 25 million gallon a day going into Eagle Creek Reservoir. And that's the drinking water supply of everybody. They left out of this whole conversation with Gentry. They left out the fact that Lebanon's now going to be the first toilet to tap system in our state. They're going to be the first community to actually source their drinking water from the same place that they dump their wastewater. These are big topics. These are big topics that are only going to get bigger, and why they weren't a part of any of the conversation the other day. Like I said, I can only lend to the fact that I think Kendall was just being nice on it. Like I said, he did a great job of pinning them on the visas. He spoke a lot about how this LEAP development is not going to benefit people outside the area, but when it came to actual harm that it was doing to people, I mean, I think there was a little punch pulling there, because look, you can't tell me that putting 25 million gallons of industrial, and this is all just based right off the back. We are coming right off of the back of the EPA declaring the pharmaceuticals and microplastics are priority contaminants. And these are things that they said, like this new waste treatment plant out of Lebanon, it's not even going to have these extra special PFAS filters and some of the other stuff that they can do before they go drop it into everybody's drinking water. And that's the stuff. So, and I know that some of the other people that have watched the interviews and different things, they felt the same way, because I'd seen them post like, why wasn't this part? I mean, right now, with the Meta, you got 65. Somebody needs that. Here are the questions. Why is nobody asking Gentry? Do you feel bad at all about these 65 natural gas generators that are going to be blowing pollution over Lebanon? I mean, do you have any feelings about that either way? Do you have any feelings about these extra, known priority contaminants going into the faucets of the people that, the families of the children that you say you're representing? Do you have any feelings about that? I mean, what about these? Do you care at all for the people that are having 24/7 daylight because Meta over there doesn't know how to shut the damn lights off? I mean, do you have any feelings about any of this stuff? The people that are being harmed, the people that don't know. I know right now people living in spots where this all their developments and mats don't even show their home being there. They don't even show the road no more. These people are being wiped out and they're just living. So now you got all these people living in some kind of limbo that don't know exactly. I'm seeing the pipeline go now, just tearing people's yards up, putting all this stuff, cutting all the trees out. They're putting structures in their yard. There's all kinds of stuff. And people are out here paying the price. And it's like, do you have any feelings whatsoever? Or are you just so beholden to this stuff that you don't care who you harm in the process of doing it? Because that's just it. I mean, we're literally talking about a Lebanon that's now going to be transformed from a just normal rural community to being having air pollution, contaminants in their water, light pollution, noise pollution, and there's no real concern from the Lebanon mayor. And that's why when he gets out there and says that he has the majority of Lebanon support, I mean, I about spit my drink out. There is nothing more nonsensical than the thinking that Matt Gentry has the support of Lebanon community and the surrounding area, because you can go to any corner of this community and ask, and people do not have anything good to say about him. And when the polling that I've done, which I posted to the shop page and, kind of shared around, and I think I'm going to add a lot more because that's just a taste. I posted 4 or 5. 95% of people plus disagree with the things they're doing in this community. And he does not have it. And he can come out and say, oh, bud, your polls aren't scientific. Well, in a sample size of 20,000 people, 377 votes is a 5%, margin of error, which when you're talking about 95+%, I'll take my 5% margin of error there all day long. But that's just it. When you're on a board that has 10,000 people and you're getting 400 votes, well, buddy, that's a pretty good slice of the community. And that for people that want to say, no, we can all look on these chat boards. You see your neighbors on there. You see friends, family. You see these different subjects of people. The chat boards are a pretty good slice of the community. They even have old people. I mean, you have people that are extremely elderly that still get on there and post. Why? Because their nieces and nephews set it up for them, which is awesome. Everybody should be involved in what's going on. And right now, getting on these different boards and getting online and hunting down the information is the only way you can even get close to the truth, because nobody talks about these things. Nobody comes out and brings out the real part of the story. And that's just like in the debate with Matt and Kendall when they were talking about the land. And, Matt goes, it was under contract. They just happened to leave out the fact that these farmers had to request annexation as part of the agreement to get that big check. That's how it worked. I mean, and to me, I view that as a bribe. You paid this individual, offered them an amount of money to do something. It wasn't that this land was posted for sale. There hadn't been signs out there. These farmers weren't looking to, get out of farming or doing none of this other stuff they're talking about. These farmers had backroom IEDC brokers coming to them, offering them insane amount of money. They just weren't allowed to tell nobody about it. And they had to request annexation by Lebanon, which put the ball of all of this area out west of Lebanon into the city's court. But what's the city going to do with it? The city took that power. They got all this land. They got all this. And what are they going to do? They're going to turn Lebanon into a toilet. They're going to send all this air pollution into there, and they're going to send in tainted water, lights, noise, all this stuff. This stuff is not going to, if they wanted Lebanon to stay a nice community, they would not have put that stuff right up west of Lebanon, because that's not how that works. There's a better chance of a nice community developing west of all this development than there is. And that's why I think that communities like Thorntown and some of these other, they better watch it. We're hearing the murmurs already. And I posted a little bit about that. I posted that aerial footage, and the guy that does that stuff does great work. He gets out there with the drone and does great aerial photos of all that stuff. And I posted it to the Thorntown Ledger. I was like, all you people better, take a good look while you can, because right now you already got talk of them wanting, like the county's got that development over there by 47 and 65 getting ready to go up. And they're trying to get a sewer district. Now, this is rumored by what I've heard, but they're trying to get a sewer district, and they kind of want Thorntown to get in on the sewer district, because then that might allow them to start developing up 47 into Thorntown. Now, there's a lot of people that are in positions of power that own property around these areas. So I think everybody ought to be very vigilant over that way about what's coming, because all these people are seeing this big money, and it's really put a lot of greed in our community, because once the governments come in and you see these people getting just ridiculous wealthy, these people are getting generational money, and some of it, I get it. I mean, nobody wants to, and for a lot of these people, I 100% understand. The lottery came to town, and very few people say no to the lottery. Now, we've went over that before too. There's some of them, like some of the farmers that have gotten millions of dollars from the people over the years in subsidies. Well, there's a piece of me on that says, okay, the community has been putting out here for you guys for all of these years, and we've been sitting there standing behind you, supporting you and your farming efforts, and now you kind of sold everybody out to get a big check. Now that kind of burns a little bit the wrong way, but there was a lot of people in there that wasn't how it was. They weren't the people that were getting the big checks, but obviously there was the biggest part of the landowners that sold were definitely in that bracket. And as always, the big elephant in that room is always going to be that you got the people, this person took, that person didn't tell. Should they not have? But the big elephant in that room is always the government should have never had the power to be able to take taxpayer money and use it to bribe people into hurting their friends and neighbors. I mean, that is a disgusting system that ultimately has to be tamped down, because as long as these people can continue to use the IEDC and these giant sums of money to make their desires come true and to make them all an incredible amount of money, then that's what they're going to do. And we've seen it across our state. Politicians are bought cheap. I mean, some of these people could be bought probably for an incredibly low sum of money in the grand scheme of these deals. And, these politicians are more than happy to come out and just lie blunt face to the community, like Gentry's telling. I mean, literally, they told everybody in the community that there was enough water. Oh, yeah, we can do these annexations. There's plenty of water. Well, and now all of a sudden the people are on the hook. We're paying $700 million to pipe it here and all these problems, and we're going to pollute the Eagle Creek Reservoir. And that's just it. And everybody keeps letting them off. And that's why I will say, lastly, as I'm wrapping up the show for today, I mean, everybody is going to have to quit being nice to these politicians. We're going to have to hold their feet to the fire for the real things that they are doing and for the real harm that they're doing to the community. And, I always want to leave on a really a good note that really lifts everybody up. Well, I want to talk about Festus, Missouri. They had a city council that voted in this data center nonsense on all of them, and they just turned out every single member of the community that was voting against them. And that is the way, guys. Everybody needs to get out here. And with these elections coming up, everybody needs to look into the candidates, ask them where their stances are on this stuff. And every single person that has had a hand in these dealings and a hand in destroying this community and a hand in selling out our heritage, they can just sit there and go pound sand somewhere else. Put them on a bus, send them packet, give them their ticket. I'll see you next week.